Hi everyone, welcome to the Diamond Mothering, the mother-daughter happy place, presented by Lisa and Caroline. Welcome back, everyone. A very, very warm welcome to this evening's show. And I'm really excited about this evening because I've asked Lisa to actually come on and talk about her brand new book, The Emotionally Powerful Mother. And within the book, she shares 5 keys for this parent paradigming shift in our style of parenting. And it's really kind of been the nucleus of the idea for the Diamond Mothering, where we're trying to showcase this new shift in how we can mother in a more kind of conscious way. So she has these amazing keys that are very simply taught to mums to really move them past this difficult transitional period for the preteen into teen. And especially in the 20 for the 21st century mum, we have a lot more challenges that we have ever had to face before. So our parenting style has to be a lot different, and it has to be up to the 21st century. So I'm so excited that Lisa is going to kind of take us through each week, each Monday, to talk about these keys that she's developed, and she's really are the kind of cornerstone of this new, it's really a cutting edge book around emotional intelligence is the way I see it. And yeah, it's very exciting. Lisa, I'd love you to start on the first key and really try to explain what that is and where it came about, maybe how you came about this kind of revolutionary evolution in emotional education, please.
Thanks, Caroline. I'm really excited to actually share this because it's so effective. And I just wanted to say before I start that, like Caroline and I have been talking, we talk a lot behind the scenes. And one of the things that was really important to us was to make sure that mums and their daughters had really practical, effective things that they could do right here and now, because I think we learn a lot of information, and we have a lot of places we can go to access information, but sometimes that doesn't always translate into what it looks like in my everyday life. So for us, it was really important that we, first of all, really create a space where mums and daughters can feel like we have their backs, and that when things go wrong, which is sort of sometimes what happens because we're both learning how to do life in a different way, right? Like even though your daughter's emerging, you're also emerging. You have to change with her, otherwise this gap widens. So we just want you to know that that's always our intention, is to hold a really safe space for you and have your back, and to always be giving you really practical, useful tools. So hence we've come to the keys and starting to talk about the keys, which are just a foundation for life, really. Whether or not it's with your daughter or any of your other relationships, you'll find them so effective. And this morning, I wanted to share with you this one key that made so much difference for me, because often what gets in the way of our relationships is the conflict that we feel, right? So something happens and we get activated and then we react, and then it just goes downhill from there. And sometimes that can become a repetitive loop. So we feel a similar feeling, we tend to react in the same way, and we're annoyed at ourselves, or we're trying really hard to step out of that dynamic of relationship. And of course, what comes back at us is the same sort of thing, because the other person is in the same loop. So for me, it was like when I saw that there was this dynamic going on, because actually there's nothing wrong with the relationship. The relationship is fine. You love your daughter loves you, it's fine. Where the problem is in the dynamic that gets in the way of your capacity to feel connected to her and for her to feel connected to you.
Mhm.
And all the dynamic is how we've learned to deal with our feelings. Because we haven't been taught, and it's nobody's fault, we haven't been taught how to process our feelings and really digest what's happening and pay attention to them and even notice them. Like for me, I was 37 before I actually could really identify. I thought I felt something, but when I sat with that feeling and really felt it, it was like, oh, that's actually for a completely different reason that I thought. Like it's a different feeling. So we haven't really been taught to hear our own feelings. And so when we have a feeling, because we have no other way of dealing with it, we jump into a dynamic. And the dynamic is how we try to regulate ourselves back to some form of feeling okay about ourselves. But for all of you who know what a dynamic feels like, it doesn't feel good. And it doesn't actually regulate us back to a healthier place. It tends to separate us further and further and further from a feeling of empowerment, like true empowerment. And it tends to create more and more and more disconnection. So while our mind tells us in the short term, this is what we should do for satisfaction, it's, for me, I had to grow up and go, actually, that is not what's going to help me feel satisfied. And I had to look for other ways. And one of the ways I found was through validation. And there's a lot of, I didn't actually really understand what it was, to be honest, when I heard about validation. But what I started to notice was as soon as I applied this key, not only did my emotional charge diffuse, but when I learned how to use it for others, they felt heard. You know, when your daughter says to you something like, you just don't understand. I just feel like you're not hearing me. You know, you can be sitting there listening as hard as you like, right? You can be sitting there listening. I'm listening to you. I'm listening. And she's going, but you're not hearing me. You don't understand. And you think, well, what the frig am I doing wrong? I'm listening. I'm sitting here. I'm listening. It's because unless we feel like our emotions, unless we feel we've been emotionally heard, we really don't feel heard.
Yeah.
Unless someone can identify the feeling that we're having, we really don't feel understood.
Yeah.
Unless somebody can sit and go, oh, I get why you'd feel that.
Yeah.
Then we don't think they get us at all. And that's what validation is. So for me, I've had to learn how to use words for my daughter, like, and I'll say things to her like, I remember when I was a teenager feeling that. I know I felt that too, and it sucks. It's such a horrible feeling, isn't it? It just makes you feel like you want to curl up in bed and just like pull something over your head and just go to sleep, doesn't it? You know, like for me, I had to remember my first place to go to was to validate her, because your mum brain is going, I've got to fix it, I've got to resolve it, I've got to find a solution. Your mum brain's doing this, and you've just got to go, no. None of that is going to work until I connect with her and validate her feelings and give her this emotional safe space to feel heard. And, you know, it's really funny. I've got to share this story. The other day, one of my girlfriends, she's left a partner who they just didn't have an easy relationship. And when she left, one of her friends said to her, I want to go and punch him. I just feel like I've got to go and punch him out. And she said to me, you know what? She said, I know that that's like totally inappropriate and, you know, it's not called for. She said, but my friend saying that to me made me feel so validated. And all of a sudden, I could just let go of everything. Like her friend obviously wasn't going to go and do that. But the fact that her friend accompanied her in what she was feeling in that moment and said, I want to go and punch him out, you know, and she went, oh, you understand me.
Yeah.
You know, and she actually said, I felt like out of everybody, she said, so many people have supported me. She said, but really, when my friend said that, it was like all of a sudden I felt like I could let go and move on. And I'm like, wow.
It was diffused in that second. Yeah, she was witnessed. It was witnessing her emotion. Right.
Yeah. It's so powerful. And, you know, it's not only with our daughters, right? So this is a very powerful tool to use with them. And, right, it can be challenging, okay? Because as a mum, you're probably feeling frustrated, powerless. You may have the shits, you may be time poor, whatever it is that you are in that moment. And then you go, great, now I've got to validate as well, right? It's not like that. Actually, when we start to learn this, we do it very naturally, and it doesn't become an extra thing that we can do. But the other thing that happens is it buys us more space. It buys us more time. It buys us more harmony because we can do it for ourselves. So when I have a reaction to my daughter's behavior, words, thoughts, action, if I can quickly come into, oh, okay, well, why wouldn't I feel powerless? Oh, why wouldn't I feel angry? Like that was really disrespectful, right? I'm regulating my own emotion first before I go to her. So I give myself that, okay, well, it's understandable that you feel like you want to yell back. I understand that. Because as soon as I acknowledge that feeling, what happens is the feeling diffuses. And so my need to yell back sort of disappears because I've acknowledged that I have a feeling that makes me want to yell back. Okay, oh, there's the feeling. Oh, why wouldn't I feel? I feel not good enough because she's yelled at me. I feel unworthy. I feel disrespected. Oh, like, why wouldn't I feel like that? Why wouldn't I feel like yelling? And as soon as I validate myself, I'm actually regulating my own emotions so that then I can approach her in a way that creates connection rather than creates division. When I react, I create division from her. All I want is to connect with my daughter. So why would I keep doing that behavior? Why would I keep reacting? Because what I really want is to connect and feel the love between us and have her share with me all of her secrets and really be close to me. That's what I really want. That's what she really wants. That's what she really needs. But while ever we're reacting emotionally, we actually are preventing ourselves from getting what we want. So if you look at it like that, it's a great impetus to actually decide once and for all, okay, I'm going to try validation. I'm going to validate my feelings first internally before I go to her and let loose. I'm going to just give myself a moment to go, oh, okay. And sometimes I even share that with my daughter. Sometimes I will share with her, wow, when you said that, it landed on me as a feeling, and I felt really powerless. I just, I just felt really powerless. Or when you spoke to me like that, it landed on me as a feeling. And I've got to say, my first reaction was, I wanted to fight back because that sort of like used to be my default position. But I love you so much, and I care about you so much that I want to tell you how I feel rather than yell at you. I want to do this a different way. And I actually often say that. I love you so much that I don't want to feel resentful towards you. I love you so much that I don't want to feel angry at you. So I want to talk about how I feel. I love you so much. Like I often say things like that to her. And that way I can express how I feel. And I'm validating myself when I do that. And she understands that I'm doing that because I love her. So it's not in a blaming way, because often this was another thing I used to do. Because I hadn't validated my own emotions, I might have been calm in my response, but I was also blaming. I was sort of like, this is actually your fault. So there was this underlying dynamic of, I'm blaming you for making me feel bad. My well-being is actually your responsibility because you've just made me feel shitty, right? And that's your job to make me feel better again, not her job. My emotions are my job. So when I understood that I had this undercurrent going on, I actually realized that was the dynamic. Whatever I say is sort of like secondary. I had to remove that dynamic, and I did that by owning my emotions and validating myself as well. And then I could actually feel this capacity to connect with her and really hear her, sit with her and ask her questions about how she feels. And like and you and I talk about this all the time, Carol, and it's like this, it's amazing how just being emotionally heard and understood, like creating that emotionally safe space, so much healing happens in that, and we don't have to do anything. Like, it really
Absolutely.
is a miracle,
It's just creating
So
that safe space. But even when you're talking about it there, I can say, it just naturally creates that safe place for yourself and for the other person. Because, I suppose like we have been trained up to this point, like we're, in our middle age, that we haven't had that kind of education. So it's just been kind of automatic, that we kind of, like you say, want to fix it, or we suppress our own emotions. So then that causes a buildup of resentment if you're not processing how you feel in the moment. So, like, if you're angry and you're pretending to be calm and not be angry, where's that going? It has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And it becomes
Yeah.
resentment and becomes like your tone of voice changes. And I often talk to you about like tone of voice, so important. And you can't, it doesn't lie. Children and teens, they know your tone. So you might be saying one thing, but actually your tone is saying a completely different thing. And there is a buildup in that. So it's really not like what I always, and I talk to you about true relationship. Like true relationship is being truthful about how you feel, like is what you just demonstrated there. Being truthful about how you're actually feeling in the moment, being truthful to yourself and honest with yourself about how you're reacting in these in those interactions as such. I'm really getting curious about that because sometimes, like you said, we haven't had at this age the education around how to process our emotions, and it's not our fault. It's just a generational thing. And actually, that's why this paradigm shift is happening. And it's really exciting, actually, because we have it's a time of change where we can now start to do that work, and we can start to kind of process our own emotions, and we can start to release emotions, and we start to get that an amazing control on our life, and we can start to create a kind of a much more consciously happy life and designing our life from the inside out, as we often talk about, and then we start to have, these beautiful relationships in our life, which is, helps us shine like the diamond we always talk about as well, because that's a lot of the time having an effect on our well-being. So our emotional well-being has a huge effect on our mental well-being, and our physical well-being, so it really is the missing link, I think. And it's an exciting time that, this is kind of coming, I think, in the midst of technology and everything that's happening for 21st century moms and daughters, that something new is emerging from it. And, this emotional emergent, design, and we talk about a lot as well, that it's kind of like a healing process for both mother and daughter. It's a wonderful
So true. Yeah. I
healing.
totally agree with that. And I actually think I want to go out on a limb and say actually everything is an emotional issue. Like all of the mental health, it all stems from emotion. Like it is the emotional world, the emotional consciousness has been largely untapped and very much misunderstood. So this is the paradigm we're coming into now. It's embracing this emotional consciousness as part of our everyday life, because it is part of us. We can't deny that. And, I just wanted to pick up on two things that you said too, Carolyn, because I think that they're really important little questions that we could be asking ourselves. And I love this, Carolyn and I do a lot of this questioning, this deep questioning of the way we feel and think, because this is how we understand ourselves better and can redesign the life that we want. So I want to pick up on two things there. One was talking about resentment and how we build up resentment. And I'd like to ask you, if you feel resentment, have a look at the resentment, because often we feel resentment towards our children, our partners, our friends, our workplace. But when you really sit with that resentment, I'd like you to ask yourself, who are you really resenting? And you may discover that the resentment actually is towards yourself, because you're not being true to you, because you're not being true to your feelings, because you haven't spoken up when you should have, because you haven't expressed those feelings and validated the feelings in yourself. And that for me was a massive discovery. And as soon as I realized, oh my gosh, all this resentment is actually towards me because I've not been honest with people about my feelings and the way I feel all the way along. And when I discovered that, I actually freed myself from a lot of resentment. So that's a really powerful contemplative exercise you can do. And then the other thing I wanted to say was about trust, because we just talked about, you were talking about creating emotional safety. Now, most mums I speak to want is to be able to trust their daughters. I just want to be able to trust her. I can't trust her. She's secretive, la, 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 la. if you flip that around, can they trust you? Can they trust you with their feelings? Can they trust you? And this is why holding this emotionally safe space where you're just validating her and just accompanying her in her feelings, that process alone creates incredibly deep, unshakable trust between two human beings. You know, if I know that my mum can be there for me to hear my emotions and really validate them and witness them, and yeah, I get why you'd feel that. Like, whew, and that must feel, and asking questions, I wonder if you feel this. I wonder if you feel that. So sometimes my daughter doesn't know what she feels, and I say, oh, I wonder if it's that. So I just ask her questions, and then all of a sudden she'll hit the, when you hit it, you know, like Carolyn talks about that, it's like this internal beeper that goes beep, 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 when you hit that emotion.
Metal
Isn't
detector,
it?
I call it.
Yeah, it is. It's
The
like that.
gold, the gold, yeah.
So true. So it's like you can help her do that for herself by asking questions. And if she knows that you're going to hold that safe for her, that space for her, and not go and tell your friends or not talk about it later or not try and fix her, not try and solve her problem. You know, if she knows and she sees that you can do that for her, then that's what builds trust. She can trust you because you're always going to turn up in that same way every time, to be there for her, to hear her, to understand her. And you won't ever have to use those words, my daughter just doesn't listen to me, my daughter just doesn't understand. Like, you just don't have those feelings or those conversations because they just don't exist anymore. And wow, what a paradigm shift that is, right?
Huge. That is massive. That is fabulous. Really amazing, Lisa. Thanks so much for sharing that key. And like, I really can see you so excited even talking about it.
Yeah, I love it.
You light up. It's like
Yeah.
you're in your element talking about
Yeah.
this, you know, and it just, you can see how passionate you are about teaching it and talking about it. And like, I always talk about like people getting into their positions and, you know, living their purpose. And I really feel that is it's such your purpose to be working, you know, around that this new kind of paradigm shift around emotional well-being, as I like to call it, you know, as because it's so effective. I guess you see the changes it's had in people's lives. You know, have you got any stories that you could share, like, you know, with examples of like mums that have,
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
absolutely.
transformed, you know, relationships
Yep.
with their daughters through that
Yeah,
that key.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I had one mum say to me, Lisa, I can't even really quite tell you how this works, but as soon as I started doing this process and applying these keys, and it just changed everything. The relationship with both my son and my daughter, like almost instantly. And I was just like, wow, that's great. And I said to her, tell me what happened. And she was talking to me about how her daughter was vaping, which is, you know, a lot of young teenage girls in Australia have been vaping.
Mhm.
And it seems to be really common. And she said, and I just didn't know what to do about it. She said, I had to do something. I had to do something. So I grounded her for 2 weeks and I took it off her and I took her phone off her. And I was just like, oh, okay. And how did that feel for you? And she said, it felt terrible. I felt so terrible doing that. And I don't think it was effective because she just got the shits and slammed the door and went to her room and it felt horrible. And I said, and did you find, you know, after a week or so, she said, well, it didn't make any difference because she just was resenting me. And I went, okay. And she said, but what else was I going to do? Like, I felt like I had to do something. And I think this is really important to remember as mums is our mind and our programming, our cultural upbringing tells us we have to do something. You know, we have to do something. We have to do something. And because we really haven't had a lot of emotional education, often what we do is react.
Mm.
And in reaction, we can never get the outcomes we want because we're taking that action from a place of feeling powerless.
Mhm.
So when I react and I implement some discipline or some consequence from a reactive state, I'm actually reacting from a place, a state of being where I'm not in my true power,
Yeah.
where I'm not centered, where I'm not feeling good about myself. So the actions that I take can never be as effective as the ones I take when I'm really centered and in my power and I'm responsive and I can see everything and I've validated my feelings. So I've returned to my true presence. I've returned to a place inside myself where I feel like I'm strong, my true presence. And from that place, whatever I do from that place, the outcomes are so much more effective. So me explaining to this mum, acknowledge that you're going to have a feeling around this vaping, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I've got to do something, otherwise my daughter's going to vape for the rest of her life and she's going to end up on the streets. Like we don't even think about what we think, right? Our little unconscious brain just all of a sudden paints the worst picture for us, and we've just followed it all the way to the end of our daughter's tragic life, right? And then we react from that place. So as soon as she started to question herself and go, oh, okay, so I'm feeling powerless. I'm feeling really powerless because of what happened here. Why wouldn't I feel powerless? Because I really don't know what to do, you know? And she said, so, all right, and then what do I do? And I said, well, what's really interesting is when you step into the process with your daughter, into the emerging process, and you create an emotionally safe space for her, you start to talk and communicate, and the solution very often appears, you know? And so she did exactly that. She went and she spoke to her daughter, and she said to her daughter, I'm sorry for my reaction, but what happened for me was I felt really powerless and I felt like I had to do something. So I just wanted to let you know that was how I felt, but let's start again. I feel this around what your behavior, like what you're doing, and this is why I have all these concerns. And she said, but what's going on for you? You know, what is it that you're feeling that you might that you really wanted to do this? Because I'm sure that you know that vaping's not good for you. Like everybody knows that. There's no point in me telling you that it's not good for you because you already know that. But what's going on for you? I really want to hear. I really want to understand why, this has been like the next thing that you've done in your process as being a teenager. And essentially that was a conversation she had with her. But she said, my approach to my kids now is so different because mostly, she said, because I'm validating my own emotions. So I'm not reacting anymore. I'm validating my own emotion. And so I'm able to respond and I'm able to support them and hear them. And like this was a couple of months ago now, and she still tells me how amazing the relationship is with her daughter, like how much they talk, and she said her daughter now comes in and just sits on her lap while she's in her office doing her work. And I'm just like, wow. So it's like amazing. Powerful. It's really powerful.
It really is. But when you're talking about that there, it sounds like, a very mature person to have that, having that conversation that, she's taken ownership of her own emotions first, which is actually really kind of, it creates a confidence in the person. When you're talking about that, I feel like there's somebody you could trust, like you're talking about. And then I feel like I trust this person, and I also feel safe because she's able to, validate her own emotions, and I'll feel safe in that space to be able to talk about my own emotions, So it's a very kind of, beautiful, honest communication about, that the truth of both people and that true relationship, really gorgeous. And Donna Marie is on listening to us. Hi Donna
Marie.
Thanks for joining
us. That's true, and like it just made me think then, if you can imagine what it feels like to be in the body of a teenager or a tween girl at the moment, right? There would be no emotional space to feel, because if nobody around you is holding a space, right? You've got all this emotion and you're probably on social media, you've got these messages coming to you all the time, you're not good enough, you're unworthy. So you must feel like, as a teenage girl, just imagining how overwhelming that would feel. And then imagine how freaking amazing it would feel to have a mum that just went, here's your space. This is your space for you to actually feel and bring in what you're feeling and share it and process that. Here is the space for you. Imagine that.
Amazing.
Like that, regardless of the fact that you're going to have an amazing relationship, what an absolutely amazing gift you can give your daughter. That really is the most incredible priceless gift you could ever give your daughter in this chaotic world.
Absolutely, just like a diamond. Because
Yeah.
also you're not just doing that for your daughter. You're also that's an inheritance for the next
Yeah.
generation
Yeah.
and the generation past there. Because actually, I know a friend of mine who's from India. He's the psychotherapist, and he talks about in India they know that the parenting you do in this lifetime travels on for 7 generations, has seven
Mm.
generations.
Wow.
So talk about an investment.
Yes. Yeah. 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 That's fantastic. Isn't that great?
Seven
So good.
generations,
I
you
love it.
know?
This has been such a juicy
Yeah.
conversation.
It really has.
I love it.
Absolutely love it. Thank you so much,
It is.
Lisa, for
You're
going
welcome.
through
And I
that.
just I just want to say before you go, I have put a link in here um, for anybody that hasn't downloaded the mini book on emotion education lessons from my book. It's my gift to you to read this section of my book. So please download it and read it, and it's so I found it so beneficial. So many of my clients found it beneficial, just really as an understanding of how your daughter's emotions work and how your emotions work. So, yeah, I'd love to give that to you as a gift. So,
That's
thank you. And
amazing.
thanks for listening.
Yeah, and Donna's here saying, always a pleasure. This conversation is ideal for all people and profound for mums. So
Thank you,
wonderful.
Donna.
Well done, Lisa. And it's the foundation. Would you say it's the foundation stone for you, your teaching and your work with mums, through your website and your courses and everything as well?
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
We start with these foundations, and like everything, we come into this emerging process. So it's always building and expanding, which is the beauty of what we do in the emotional world, right? There's
Yeah.
no fixed concept. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's the beauty, sometimes it makes it more challenging, but
Yeah. So
we'll
the
see it as the
keys
beauty.
the keys are, you teach the keys, but then it's always kind of unique to the to
That's
the
right. Yeah.
to the
And there's
foundation
all the
course.
practical activities and everything around it that really help implement this
Yeah.
and
And for
embody it.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Lisa. And thanks everybody for listening. And Donna says again, thank you too again. I will share again. Thanks so much. And anyone who wants
Thank
to
you.
join us again on next Monday, I'm going to get Lisa to go to key number 2 from her book. And so if you want to join us back here, and if anyone is interested in asking her any questions on the live chat, we'd love to. I'll read them out and put them to her, and any problems that you might be facing with your
Yes,
daughters
that's a great idea.
during these times. So you have a week to think about it and come back to us on next Monday. It's 9 o'clock GMT time, and is it 7 a.m. on
7
Tuesday
a.m.
morning?
in Sydney. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so if you have any, or you have friends that have any problems or are experiencing any problems with their teens at the moment, we'd love to address that on a Monday or Tuesday morning in Australia. We're covering both hemispheres.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, definitely share this, and it's some free teaching, live teaching with Lisa. So that'll be amazing. Thank you so much. And Donna
Yes.
says we
Thank you.
recommend your book to Lisa Jane. Time to get you two on a global talkback interview. Thank you so much, Donna.
Thanks,
Oh,
Donna.
it's amazing. Thank you,
That's lovely.
everybody. And
Thanks,
we'll
everyone.
see you here on Wednesday.
Bye.
We're back on Wednesday, and we have a beautiful guest. So call in and to see the feminine force field with Lisa
Forcefield.
and Caroline again. Thank you for everybody for
Yeah.
watching, and we'll
Thanks,
see you
everyone.
during the week. Bye.
Bye.